Hi gang, Rob here. It is the afternoon of 4 January 2022. Coming to you today with a knife review on a Chris Reeve product, no less. Kind of an update review on the third generation of Mnandi from Chris Reeve Knives. This one is special for two reasons that make it worthy of a review video. First of all is a new scale material or inlay material. This generation 3 Mnandi is wearing inlays made from L4N micarta, a synthetic product that is designed to emulate elephant ivory. It is designed to have the same warmth as elephant ivory, the same color as elephant ivory, the same texture, even the same grain and Schrager lines, which are visual artifacts that occur in ivory, sometimes in sort of straight lines as this one has, and it's very hard for the camera to pick up. Sometimes they're in like a mini chevron pattern. They are there. You got to have it under a bit of magnification and the right light, which I'm having trouble replicating, but it's interesting material. And while we're talking about it, I think this is finished in kind of a satin. Maybe it would be a little more striking if it were polished. I don't know. I'm sure the boys at Chris Reeve have played with that, but anyway. Pretty cool stuff. So we'll kind of back up and give you dimensions and stuff. The Mnandi has a closed length or a handle length of 3 5/8 inches. A blade length, and watch this, a blade length of about 2 3/4, so super efficient blade to handle ratio. Very much a drop point Sabenza in profile, yet thinner, both in blade thickness and in the top to bottom dimension. So more svelte than a small Sabenza blade. Just about 3/32 or 90 thousandths in blade thickness. That hasn't changed. Not much about this knife has changed, just a couple key things that we'll get into. So it is a titanium frame lock. It uses the old style Chris Reeve lock, which is a carburized face on the end of the titanium lock bar. This one's locking up about halfway, which is perfect for a Chris Reeve carburized titanium lock. Of course, zero blade play, super smooth actuation, and a perfectly centered blade. It seems to me that the machining and finishing on the handle have not changed. The edges of the handle are bead blasted, and this one's kind of coarse, coarser than I'm used to seeing on an Mnandi. If the light is showing you that, I hope it is. Same pocket clip as the second generation Mnandi. It is reversible, left or right hand tip up, even though this is a right-handed knife. Blade finishing has changed. It used to be the very soft Chris Reeve stonewash over bead blast on the flats and back around the jimping. It is now what they call a super fine bead blast, and I would say the blast on the blade is a little finer than the handle, but I wouldn't call it super fine. You still have the hollow grind finished in what Chris Reeve calls the polished finish. I would call it a very fine satin. Still have the old style Chris Reeve bushing pivot, and the detent ball is standard. It doesn't have the ceramic does it all detent, just a ball pressed into the titanium. So When you break it off lac, it's going to rest against the detent ball. Then you got to overcome that in standard Reeve integral lac fashion. The shape of the inlays hasn't changed. I don't think the internals have changed. This is a knife loaned in for review, so I didn't take it apart. On the Gen 2 Mnandi, the large offside washer was perforated. The side on the lock bar side was solid. I would assume that's the same. Don't know for sure. Haven't taken it apart. Same Chris Reeve logoed pivot. But the big change, guys, is the steel, which is now S45 VN, CPM S45 VN from Crucible. Sort of the latest version of Chris Reeve knife steel. It's used, of course, everywhere. Not proprietary to Chris Reeve, but certainly CRK had a hand in its development. So I guess the thinking behind S45 is to get back to the edge retention of S30V, which was better than S35VN, but still maintain the machinability and grindability of S35. Haven't talked to anybody at Chris Reeve as to whether that's being achieved, but I've sharpened, I don't know, 5 or 6 knives in S45, and by a couple manufacturers. Some of it has acted a lot like S30V. Some of it's been a little chippier. Can't tell you what it does in the real world under use. You know, edge retention, propensity to chip, that kind of stuff. Just haven't done any testing with it yet. But the big deal, guys, is that right there. No longer a stylized milled nail nick. And the Gen 2 Mnandi, which is the one I used to own, was kind of much maligned for the nick. I'm going to show you a picture now of the Generation 1 Mnandi nail nick. And I think you can see from that Reddit picture that I stole off the internet that the edges of the nick were pretty sharp enough so that you were able to dig the meat of your thumb in and sweep the blade open. The second generation nail nick, for lack of a better term, I'll show you a picture of that one now. That's a screenshot from my Gen 2 Mnandi review. You can see they softened the edges of that nail nick considerably. And you kind of either had to pull it open like a nail nick, or you could open it by pinching like your thumb and middle finger and then get it started, and then you could sweep it open, which was very cumbersome. Nobody really ever liked it. So in the third generation of Mnandi, we have a through hole. Now, it's in the blasted area of the flats of the blade, which give it a little grip. The edges are radiused a bit, though. But I think you've seen already, you may dig the fat of your thumb into that through hole, no longer a nail nick, and sweep that blade open. One thing I was kind of interested in as I looked at this knife for review was this question. Does the Gen 3 Mnandi exhibit some of the shortcuts that seem to be currently taken on the Sebenza 31, the Impinda, some post-Chris knives from CRK that don't seem to quite have the level of quality and fit and finish level that the old man required? I'm not seeing that on the Mnandi. The only nit I'm going to pick is the blasted finish on the blade. Nothing changed on the handle, but I got to say, once your eye is drawn to that blasted finish, it makes you kind of look over the rest of the handle. And I did notice, as I said in the beginning of the video, it seems like the bead blast on the handle is coarser. So it doesn't quite have that same Gents Folder Elite Finish kind of quality that the Gen 1 and Gen 2 Mnandis had. That's more perception than reality, though. I'm just saying, you know, a Box Elder Burl Gen 2 would look much more at home in a jewelry store case next to Rolexes and William Henry watches than this knife does. And what do I think of synthetic ivory? I don't know. What do I think about fake Rolexes? Do I have to say it? I don't think this material stands on its own as a micarta product and gives the visual appeal that would make me want to own it. And it's not ivory, so I don't want to own it. That's just me. It looks like a big slab of white from a foot away. So yeah, I would buy this knife. I would buy this knife, but I would definitely buy it in another inlay material. What's the price? Well, as with all things, not just all things Chris Reeve, but all things in general, prices, they are a-going up. This knife, which I believe is now out of stock, so obviously they didn't have any trouble selling them, but with the wrong hand, you can't open it with the thumb, by the way, because of the difference in the height of the lock bar and the offside titanium. But anyway, I digress. They've gone up, guys. I believe when I bought my Gen 2 in Gabon Ebony, that knife was a tick, like it was like $375. Does that sound right? Pretty much. Might have been a tick over 400. Now these are $450. $450 for the Mnandi. I guess when you look at the knife and evaluate it based on the sum of its parts and you compare it to an Impinda, it's easy to justify $450. When you compare it to a large Sebenza 31, might be a little pricey for the Mnandi. But still a beautiful pocket knife. I don't know. What do you guys think? I do love the fact that I can open it one-handed easily, as my hand is sort of trained to do. I don't really love the look of the through hole. I just kind of wish they'd have gone back to the old nail neck. But it's something different, and when you're trying to sell another Mnandi to a guy that has 2 Gen 1s and 4 Gen 2s, Gen 1.5 probably would not trip the trigger as much as a through hole in a blade, so it worked. I just think it makes it look less beautiful. Tell me what you think, guys. That's all I have for this one. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. Remember, the word is sharp. Talk to you soon.